Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 2 of my Saguaros series, and in this video we're going to continue to paint in the mountains and some of the vegetation. And as I showed in the first part of this series, we painted the background completely burnt orange because we want some of that warm tone and color to show through the underpainting on our picture. So I'm using Infinite Painter for Android, and here we're working on the distant mountains, and I'm trying to get the shape of the canyons and add pockets of dark and light on these canyons. And so I'm using kind of a dark purple to do this, and you can use a number 3 round brush if you're following along traditionally, and use dioxazine purple with a little bit of ultramarine blue thrown in, and maybe a little bit of white acrylic gesso to make it a little bit lighter in tone. And then here I'm trying to blend it in a little bit and add a little bit of yellow highlights, because in the photograph that I'm using, there's yellow highlights that are hitting the edges of the canyons, and it just kind of brings out the shape of the distant hills. So I'm trying to kind of get those colors in, and then I'll have to go back and sort of add in the darks again. And so that's what I'm doing here, trying to get the ridges and the little valleys and all the things that show desert canyons. And I'm sort of smudging in the canyon lines there, because you don't want them to look like just a line. You want to soften the edges, because the mountains are kind of rounded from weathering and all the weather effects that happen in the desert. And here I'm just kind of working some more on the background. Some of the mountains are darker because the clouds are above them, and they're cutting off some of the sunlight. And so I'm working a little bit more on the bottom of the hills there. And you just want to kind of look at your photo reference and see what these canyons look like. Don't draw straight lines. You want sort of jagged, crooked lines, or not draw, but paint. Don't paint straight lines. You want sort of zigzaggy lines and crooked lines and things like that. And because that gives it the depth that you need for distant mountains. And here I'm working on the middle ground mountain, and it's sort of a reddish color, and it also has the sagebrush green, I guess, or greasewood green. And you want to add some of that color there, and also some yellow ochre. So if you're following along traditionally, you could take your number 3 round brush and add some yellow ochre and some hooker's green to that, and that will give you that desert green look. And then I wanted to add a little bit of some yellow. You can use cadmium yellow light, and that will show some of the vegetation, some of the grass that's there. Also in the foreground, I'm putting some of that mustardy yellow color. You can take cadmium yellow light and mix it with a little bit of hooker's green to get that grass color. And here I'm just adding some of the darker pockets. The clouds have cast upon this mountain here, and I'm not exactly sure where this is. It's in Arizona. I got this photo off of Pixabay, and I think it might be the Superstition Mountains or something in that area because they're pretty jagged looking and stuff. So that's what I'm working on there, is trying to get that jagged look of the rocks that stick up on that mountain. And I'm adding sort of I'm using the dark green, but I need to add a little bit of purple, and I'll do that later. And maybe some brown into those shadows, because that's what they are, is shadows there. So I'm trying to get the shape of this mountain because it's a very unique shape, and so we kind of want to make sure that we get that in our painting, that it comes across that way, because that's just part of the beauty of the desert, is those odd shaped mountains that are caused by different factors. Volcanic, some of them are volcanic, some of them are just wind and water and erosion. And so you want to just go ahead and try to show that, because that's the uniqueness of the Arizona desert, and even in New Mexico and in California. All those desert looks have these jagged mountains, and so you want to kind of show that. So here I'm sort of blending in the colors here on the mountain, trying to get the look of the vegetation that's on there, and also the rocks and the things that are on the mountain, because there's a lot of rocks that are sticking out, sort of cliffs, I guess, and so you want to try to show that. And I'm just kind of going back over it till I get these shapes right. I want to try to get the shapes right. And I'm using some of the textured brushes that you can get in Infinite Painter. You can either make your own. That's one of the nice things about Infinite Painter, is that you can make your own textured brushes, or you can use the ones that come with them. And I like to try to use the stucco brush sometimes. It gives a texture. And there are several different other ones that I like to use, just to give sort of the texture of the vegetation and kind of the rocks and things. And you can go in there with each of your brushes, and you can tweak them. And here I'm just sort of making them a little bit more like vegetation look. And I like to use the Pollock brush for that. And you can take your filbert brush, if you're following along traditionally, and just tap it into your paint on the tip of it, and then lightly tap it on your canvas, and make sure that the bristles will splay out, and you get sort of a jagged look that looks like leaves and vegetation and things on your canvas. And it works nicely with the bristle brushes. And so here I'm just kind of adding the different kinds of vegetation, and I don't know what all is there. There's some cactus, there's some grass, there's creosote, which is greasewood, there's I don't know, broomweeds. I think I call them broomweeds. I think they're called snakeweed as well. And there's just a bunch of different kinds of vegetation there, and you want to try to get that look with some of these brushes. Just try to get a textured look. Some have little leaves. The cactuses have sticky pokey spines on them, I guess you'd say. In other words, if you touch them, you'll get those stickers in your hand, and they're very painful. You don't want to touch them. Just trust me, you don't want to touch them. But you want to try to get the look of that, and so that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm adding different colors because some of the vegetation is a bright green, and you could use phthalo yellow green for that if you're following along traditionally, and then add some cadmium yellow light with some white acrylic gesso in there, and let some of that orange background show through because that's the color of the dirt that's out there. It's kind of a reddish sand, and so you want to let that show through. Use some grayish purplish colors for the shadows, and maybe a little bit of some browns, and just kind of get the different pockets of dark and light and colors there, and the shapes of the vegetation. And then you can go back in later and draw in sort of the branches that stick out and maybe some individual leaves. But for the second or third layer, you kind of just want to get the shapes and the colors and put them in the positions that they are in your photo reference. So this is the end of part 2 of my Saguaro series. In part 3, we're going to work some more on the mountains and the vegetation in the front. So if you want to see that, hit the subscribe button. And thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.